Welcome to today's Explainer, everyone. Let's just dive right in. Today, I'm sitting down with my student to walk through some really fascinating source material that proposes a completely different way to look at our relationship with time, stress, and our own biology. Hey, everyone. Yeah, I'm definitely ready for this. So, can we start with a question that I and basically everyone my age ask all the time? Like, why are we all so burned out? Between school, trying to keep up with friends, a part-time job, sports, it's like I'm just constantly exhausted. Honestly, sometimes I think, is there something wrong with me? Am I just not tough enough?
That is a completely natural question to ask, and you are definitely not alone in feeling that way.
The source material we're looking at today argues that this exhaustion you're feeling, it isn't a personal failure at all. It's not a lack of motivation or toughness. The text actually proposes that burnout is a measurable, systemic biological condition. It describes it as a physical response to the way our modern world is structured, which the authors call the pathophysiology of the linear matrix. Okay, so what exactly is a linear matrix? Because that sounds pretty intense.
Right? Well, the text defines it simply as the rigid 24/7 calendar and industrial work grid that governs modern human life. Think about it. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. for school, then you've got homework, then weekend deadlines. It is a nonstop mechanical grid. And this material categorizes this grid as a chronobiological stressor. It's kind of like forcing a plant to grow on a rigid, artificial schedule instead of following the natural seasons. The clock itself is literally stressing your biology.
Okay, that makes sense. But what does that artificial schedule actually do to us on the inside?
Well, the source argues it acts like a biological pathogen that just chops up our natural flow. It specifically mentions disrupting something called the female neuroimmune interface.
Wait, female neuroimmune interface? What does that mean?
The text describes it as a highly sensitive biological alarm system. It's meant to naturally flow in a continuous, wavy pattern. But when that rigid calendar disrupts the system, the authors argue it leads to chronic mitochondrial exhaustion and even systemic autoimmune collapse.
But how can a calendar actually physically hurt my body, though? It's just days on a page. Think of your nervous system as this massive array of high-resolution sensors designed to detect really subtle environmental and social shifts. The rigid demands of this matrix basically forces emotional suppression. The text calls this chronological congestion. It's basically like blindfolding your internal sensors. Your body is screaming warnings, but the system misdiagnoses that warning signal itself as a disorder. Mentor, let me ask you this. Does it ever feel like your energy is just being drained away trying to keep up with everything? Oh, absolutely. Literally, constantly. Well, the source calls this mitochondrial parasitism. Think of ATP as the battery power of your human cells. Staying in a constant artificial high-alert state just to meet these institutional deadlines literally drains that battery power into a vortex of stress. The text claims this taxes your cells so heavily that it strips away the energy meant for cellular repair, which prematurely ages the entire system. Now, to really understand why this happens, the source material compares two different biological brain architectures, the X-linked system and the Y-linked system.
Kind of like two completely different types of computer processors?
Exactly, you hit the nail on the head. One is built for sensing everything at once, and the other is built for highly focused singular tasks. So, the X-linked system is built for multi-input, high-density connectivity. The others call it the emotional oracular immune system. Oracular? That sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. It does. It basically just means it's highly sensitive to big picture changes in the environment. It detects broad field shifts. The Y-link system, on the other hand, is designed for linear processing and a rapid return to baseline after a stressor. The argument here is that our modern world was built around that focal linear processing, which completely overwhelms those sensitive multi-input sensors. Okay, so why are our bodies and the calendar fighting so much in the first place? Why is there such a massive mismatch?
The source material points to a mathematical engineering flaw in how we track time itself, and it all revolves around one specific number, 11.
The text details something it calls the malware injection. It points out that human biological repair naturally synchronizes to a 354-day lunar biological cycle. But the industrial world forces us onto a 365.24 days solar calendar. Oh, wow. So we are essentially out of sync by about 11 days every single year? Correct. That creates an 11-day gap, which they call the 11-day drift. The authors argue this linear governance basically functions as a frequency jammer, causing intense friction with our own cellular repair cycles. So if we're basically running on the wrong software, what is our natural rhythm actually supposed to look like?
According to the text, over a roughly 28-day cycle, day 1 begins cognitive output. By day 7, your body requires stasis or rest to clear out toxins. Around day 21, a really massive biological event is supposed to occur, a cerebrospinal fluid or CSF pulse.
Okay, what exactly is a CSF pulse?
Think of it simply as the body's natural brainwashing fluid. It flushes things out. And then by day 28, the system resets.
But here is the problem. When you are forced into the 24/7 industrial tempo, there are constant, spiky demands for homework, tests, shifts at work. So when you hit day 21, right when that brainwashing fluid needs to clear out metabolic toxins, an institutional deadline slams down like a giant red brick, blocking the flush entirely. Wow. So that is why finals week literally feels toxic to my brain. That is exactly how the source describes it. It redefines burnout not as a psychological issue, but as synaptic congestion caused by this blocked clearance. Your brain literally cannot wash itself. This is blowing my mind a little. Does this go deeper than just biology, like into physics?
It actually does. The source material zooms way out into quantum physics, arguing the calendar is a static, standing wave that causes acoustic interference.
Acoustic interference. Okay, you lost me there.
Think of it like a radio station being jammed by loud static. The calendar acts as a jammer, preventing the body from playing its natural song. The text argues this forces the human collective to vibrate at a dissonant frequency, resulting in things like autoimmunity.
The source even uses M-theory to argue that this 11-day calendar drift acts like an acoustic ceiling. The human nervous system is designed to resonate at higher dimensions, but that drift presses down on it.
Wait, M-theory? Higher dimensions? Can you slow down just a bit for me?
Sure. Put simply, the text claims the calendar acts as a static barrier that traps our perception in a loop. It calls this a dimensional cul-de-sac. Essentially, we get stuck repeating the exact same stressful timeline because the calendar static blocks us from tuning into a higher frequency. Okay, so how do we actually escape this trap? Like, how do I fix the burnout?
The author outlines a mechanism to escape by retuning your internal string. By reclaiming what they call genetic time, your internal frequency realigns, and the parasitic resonance of the matrix loses its lock on you. The host essentially phases out from the tracking grid.
To put this into practice, the source material offers an observation called the anaretic gate series, which involves telomeric rung activations. Okay, anaretic gate, telomeric rung. I'm definitely confused again. I know, it's a lot of complex terminology, but it's actually for a simpler idea. The text suggests that by paying close attention to natural cycles, like specific phases of the moon over several months, you can slowly shift your focus away from the artificial calendar. It's like climbing a ladder, step by step, out of the timeline loop so you can actually participate in the present moment.
If this is so deeply biological, how do doctors usually treat this kind of burnout? Usually it's just medicine, right?
Well, the source contrasts two approaches. One is reactive medicine, which treats symptoms with pills to suppress them, keeping you firmly anchored to linear time. The other approach proposed in the text is spiral epidemiology. This anchors to genetic time and uses your emotional sensitivity as an actual diagnostic tool, rather than just viewing it as a disorder to be medicated.
And if you're looking for the source's proposed game plan, it outlines a sovereignty protocol broken down into 3 actionable steps. Step 1 is somatic repair. Step 2 is the temporal void. And step 3 is an institutional buffer.
For somatic repair, the text suggests using vagal repair to process emotional data rather than suppressing it. The temporal void involves identifying that 21-day point we discussed earlier and actively deprioritizing industrial labor. Wait, deprioritizing industrial labor, meaning like taking a break from homework or my shifts at work? I would absolutely love that, but how does that actually work in the real world without just failing? It's definitely a challenging proposition. But the text suggests taking time to literally allow your brain to wash itself is biologically necessary, not just a luxury. Finally, the institutional buffer step suggests society itself needs to redesign to prioritize the health of those sensitive, double-dosage sensors to restore our collective ability to actually sense danger. The core takeaway from these texts is encapsulated perfectly in this quote. Sovereignty is not a political state. It is a homeostatic requirement. Orientation is the first act of sovereignty. The material suggests that your burnout is a signal that the system itself is flawed, and reorienting your relationship with time is biologically necessary. This is wild, but honestly, it makes so much sense of why I feel the way I do. Thank you for breaking down all this strange, complex material. This is definitely something we all need to think more deeply about.